Hello. Have you ever wondered what it was like when malaria was an incurable disease? If that seemed like a bad time? What if I tell you that history might just repeat itself, and malaria may become as it was in the past? Let me explain. But first, imagine this scenario.
Let's say you wake up one day feeling very sick, so you decide to see your doctor. After a series of clinical assessments and tests, the doctor finally diagnoses you with malaria and gives you some medications for it. But it doesn't work. How will you feel? You may get angry. Very angry. You would most likely blame the doctor, medications, the whole health system, or even the president of Nigeria. But very soon, you discover that anger is not the cure to malaria and you are feeling worse. So you decide to seek the opinion of other doctors. However, they all come to the very same conclusion that it is malaria and somehow all your medications are not working. At this point, desperation and despair can start to set in as the situation starts getting worse. It may soon become clearer by the minute that time is running out.
This scenario is an example of a phenomenon called resistance. It is a situation where drugs that used to work for a particular disease, in this case, malaria, suddenly stop working. Unfortunately, this danger is very close as so many people have started having malaria strains resistant to artemether lumefantrine, which happens to be the most common malaria medication today. The major question now is, how can we stop this from happening? In order to answer that, we have to have an idea of how resistance comes about in the first place, in order to identify what causes resistance to malaria medications. We may have to take a brief look at history. After all, as they say, history always repeats itself. Malaria has been around for a long time. A very long time. And it is a very powerful disease. So powerful that some scholars blame the downfall of Rome partially on malaria. The race to beat malaria, however, started when the Europeans set their eyes towards Africa. It first started with Portuguese traders finding gold in Africa around 1400 AD. In order to avoid foreign competition and claim all that gold, they decided to annex Africa. However, malaria played a very big role in pushing them back. About 12,000 Portuguese died every month. This was enough to stop the Portuguese in their tracks. The slave trade and colonization of Africa could not start until the Europeans found a way to tackle malaria. By the year 1600, the Queen of Cinchon fell terribly ill and was cured by chewing on the bark of cinchona tree. It was at this point that the power of malaria was broken. Later, in 1822, scientists Joseph Pelletier and Jean Byname would later extract quinine from the bark of cinchona tree. This was the birth of modern malaria treatment. It would not be until the 1930s that another breakthrough in the treatment of malaria came out, and from an unexpected source at that, the chemical company, IG Fabian, which later became notorious for its unethical testing under the control of the Nazis, synthesized chloroquine in 1934. However, they overestimated its toxicity and ironically licensed the compound to their sister company in America, Winthrop. Chloroquine would later become very useful to the American and the Allied forces when the Germans and Japanese cut off their supply of quinine. After World War II, chloroquine quickly became the choice of drug the World Health Organization wanted to use to eradicate malaria around the world. But it came at a price. That was the first time we realized malaria would fight back. Malaria parasites became resistant to chloroquine and chloroquine started becoming ineffective. This created a panic which led to the development of other antimalarials. But the tangible breakthrough came from the discovery of artemisinin in China from the plant sweet wormwood, also known as Artemisia annua. This discovery by a team of scientists led by Tu Gaoyi would later lead to a Nobel Prize. This time the WHO learned from the mistakes of chloroquine and had various plans to prevent resistance from happening. For instance, they made sure artemisinin and its derivatives was combined with unrelated antimalarials. This strategy is highly effective. Unfortunately, malaria has once again shown it can fight back. We now have strains of malaria that are resistant to multiple combinations of artemisinin. In Nigeria, there has been growing reports of resistance of malaria parasites to artemether lumefantrine, which is our common drug of choice. If we are to continue to enjoy the freedom we have from malaria, and make sure we do not empower malaria to kill and impoverish Africans as it did before, we must prevent resistance from happening. So, the questions are, why is malaria becoming resistant to our treatment again? What can we do to stop it? Here are some reasons malaria is fast becoming resistant to treatment. The first is due to the fact that people do not use malaria medicines properly. If you do not take malaria medicines as your doctor or pharmacist ask you to, chances are you will give malaria parasites time to fight back. Another reason is probably because we have been using the same set of drugs for a long time now. For example, many people keep taking artemether lumefantrine when the WHO has recommended other drugs like dihydroartemisinin and piperquine, which some studies show is more efficacious than artemether lumefantrine. A third reason is we have become too reliant on the cure for malaria, forgetting that prevention is better than cure. So what's the solution? You can start by consulting your doctor and pharmacist before taking any malaria medicine. Also remember, prevention is better than cure. Get good drainages, use mosquito nets, use repellents and other prevention methods. Finally, I will personally recommend that you do not use a single combination of malaria drugs every time you have malaria.
There's a plethora of ACTs endorsed by the WHO. Why use only one?
For example, chloroquine is slowly regaining its efficacy after being neglected for a while. If you use artemether lumefantrine for malaria at one time, for instance, try using a different drug like dihydroartemisinin and piperquine when next you come down with malaria. In conclusion, whether we win this war against malaria or not is completely in your hands. Do the right thing. Let us stop malaria in its tracks before it stops us by breaking the chain of malaria resistance today. God bless you.